네, 안녕하세요. 네, 안녕하세요. 예, 아이고 감사합니다. 그래요. 지금 우리 사실 제가 많이 경험하면서 우리 학부모나 그리고 우리 학생들은 세상에서 제일 바쁜 사람인 거 제가 잘 알고 있거든요. 그래서 진짜 귀중한 시간 내주셔서 감사드리고요. 그리고 학생들한테는 굉장히 좀 모티베이션이 되는 그런 시간이 되도록 좀 준비했거든요. 단순히 뭐 마케팅이라든지 학교 입학이라든지 뭐 이런 것보다는 더 중요한 게 좀 있다. 왜 이런 것들을 얘기를 해주려고 하는 것 같아요. 제 자신도 그 상담을 하면서 정말 많은 걸 배우고요. 정말 깊이 있는 질문 가지고 얘기하다 보니까 정말 좀 알지 못하는 분야를 제가 또 공부를 해야 되고요. 예, 이런 부분이 좀 있는 것 같아요. 그래요. 오늘 준비를 하긴 하는데 지금 이렇게 할게요. 지금 이렇게 에듀케이션 포럼이라는 제목으로 달았거든요. 그래서 좀 생소할 수 있을 것 같아요. 좀 뉴스라든지 뭐 그죠? TV라든지 왜 이런 데서 쓰는 용어인 것 같아요. 그래서 약간 저도 그죠? 익숙하진 않는데 포럼은 약간은 좀 우리가 대화를 좀 더 하는 거거든요. 그죠? 그다음에 물론 뭐 질문에 압박을 드리진 않을게요. 하지만 언제든지 질문할 수 있도록 기회를 좀 드리고요. 그리고 그 좀 그죠? 뭐 뭐랄까 좀 격식이라든지 왜 이런 것보다는 약간 좀 격식을 풀고요. 그다음에 저는 항상 교육은 이런 거라고 생각을 해요. 그 뭐랄까 뭔가 가르쳐 주는 게 아니라 질문 통해서 교육이 된다는 생각을 많이 하거든요. 그러면 질문을 많이 할 수 있는 분위기를 만들어 주는 게 훨씬 중요하다. 그런 생각을 좀 많이 해요. 그래서 물론 제가 그렇게 하는데도 불구하고 하지 않는 사람이 있는 거 분명히 알아요. 하지만 우리가 톱 대학교를 생각하고 의대를 생각을 하고 그다음에 사회에서 뭔가 자기 역할을 생각한다라고 하면 꼭 그 부분이 중요하다는 것을 좀 인식해 주시면 좋을 것 같고요. 그래서 어렵게 온 만큼 제가 굉장히 좀 뭐랄까 의미 있는 시간으로 만들어 주도록 제가 할게요. 그래요. 그러면 제가 좀 소개를 해줄게요. Okay, so Yasmin, can you introduce your friends? Okay.
Hi, very good afternoon to everybody, and thank you very much for coming. Oh, sorry. Okay. Stand here. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming today. I know it's your national holiday, so thank you for taking the time. We are very excited to be here in Seoul and in Korea, just to give you information and give you some insights on how do you strategize your applications to top universities. But actually, more than that, is to give you an opportunity to provide a platform for your children and for students to get on this aspirational learning journey. And through this process, what we really aim for is for you to enjoy this process. Enjoy the process, discover your passion, build strategy for your passion, build evidence for your passion, and then, of course, getting into top universities is obviously an outcome, but more than that, the outcome that we're really aiming for is for you to gain so much more knowledge, improve your academics, enjoy what you're doing, and the outcome as a byproduct will be hopefully your university destinations. I came to the UK as an international student, so I'm from Malaysia. I did my Form 5, which I believe it will be here in Korea will be year 10, grade 10, year 11, depending on the year 11, GCSE equivalent. So I completed that, and then I was the third best in the country, top in my state, and I went to the UK on a scholarship to study my A-levels there, and then I did natural science at Cambridge, and after graduating, I was waiting for my research grant. I was doing something in genetics, and whilst I was waiting for my research grant that was in Cardiff in Wales, I started tutoring, and I started tutoring children from my neighborhood. These were kids who went to a normal state school but weren't quite doing very well in their school. They were getting E and D grades, and they ended up getting A's and A stars. And I still remember it was a cultural shock for me because a parent came to see me and said, "We're very happy with the C grade." And of course, coming from Malaysia, that was unheard of. I think my parents would have stopped talking to me if I had a C grade. So I came from that. So that was a cultural shock to me. So I worked with British kids. getting into, students who then end up getting fantastic results. I went on to set up Cardiff Sixth Form College, and then it topped the league table. So that was set up in 2008. It topped the league table in 2010, and that was actually quite disruptive at the time because it was the first time in the history of British education that a sixth form college run by a foreigner topped the league table with British kids who were non-selective students. They were not the top students from their school. And not only that, they went on to get fantastic university destinations. Over time, then we started receiving applications from students from overseas, started off from Hong Kong and other countries, and then it became a predominantly international college. And then it continued we continued to top the league table since 2010. I moved to Oxford International College in 2017. I took an unranked school and topped that in the league table by 2019. And more importantly, my team and I, we have sent over thousands of students to top universities. But my mission here today is really just as an international student from an international background, is to really introduce you firsthand to my colleagues here from the university so that you can hear firsthand what they're looking for when you apply to these universities. Because this process of expectation, of course, you want to aim for these universities, but it's really crucial that through this process, we don't lose the enjoyment, the discovery of the passion, and through that, actually, you do gain the outcomes as well. But you've got to understand what the strategy is, provide opportunities for the children to actually engage in discovering their passion, and then you will see the results. So really, that's really the mission here today. And we will leave you with tangible action points as well. So we're not just going to give you information, we will leave you with tangible action points that you can take to help your children or for the students to help themselves as well. So I hope you enjoyed today's session. We're going to have a forum first, and then it will be followed by certain workshops. And of course, if you have questions, by all means ask your questions, because this is a great opportunity to have the superstars of the G5 universities here from Imperial, Oxford, and Cambridge. So I think it's a very unique opportunity, and I know that this very seldom happens where academics from the universities would come and talk to you. So I think this is a great. So please do ask questions. I know we come from a culture that we don't ask questions because that's the same in Malaysia, but I really urge you to do so because it's one in a lifetime opportunity to meet academics from these universities, so you can hear firsthand what they want, because there are three things I've understood from their talks. They're looking at academic ability at the time when you apply. They're looking at the teachable factor, and they're looking at your potential as you will be taught at university. So that's what the three things I've gained listening to all of them speaking in Hong Kong over the last few days. So really, it's just to understand that better. So I'm going to pass the mic to them, and they can introduce themselves. So I'm really excited that they're here. So I hope you gain a lot from today. Is there anything you want to translate? Or?
그래요. 굉장히 좀 말을 빨리 했는데 이분이 카디프 식스폼을 만들었었거든요. 그리고 사실 전 2년은 사실 카디프 식스폼에서 있었고 그다음에 10년 전쯤이었거든요. 그래서 그때 학생이 한 40명 정도 있을 때 이제 좀 만나기 시작했어요. 그때 이후로 계속 톱을 하고 있는 거예요. 그리고 어떤 이유 때문에 옥스퍼드 인터내셔널 칼리지로 옮겼는데 사실 그때는 카디프 떨어지는 사람들이 옥스퍼드 인터내셔널 칼리지에 있었거든요. 근데 갑자기 1, 2년 만에 또 톱이 되고, 그러니까 여기는 그냥 톱으로 만들고 싶어서 하는 왜 이런 노력도 있지만 학생들이 이 시스템으로 계속 톱이 된 거죠. 그래서 뭐 운이 좋게 그죠? 두 학교에서 거의 10년 동안 톱을 하고 있고요. 그리고 이 기회에 그죠? 뭐 말씀드렸던 것처럼 좀 그죠? 모시기 힘든 분, 한국에 처음에 오신 분 이렇게 있거든요. 그래서 좀 소개를 좀 하고 그죠? 진행을 하도록 하겠습니다. No, you don't have to. So, okay, yeah.
Okay.
Dr. You can sit down and then you can introduce yourself. Yeah.
Maybe it'll go up now. Hi, I'm Dr. Randall Perry from Imperial College. I've had the privilege of being at University of Oxford as a fellow for 2 years. I've been at Imperial College for quite a few years, too many to name after that. And before that, I did my degrees in the United States at University of Washington, a bachelor's, master's, and PhD. I'm also part of a program in the United States that was started that now gives a second PhD in astrobiology. But when I did it, I was one of the very first ones to do it with NASA, in which means that you're in multiple departments. Mine were microbiology, astronomy, and earth sciences. So I've got a certification from NASA as an astrobiologist. If I'm around long enough, I'll be able to look at the sample return from Mars, where we're looking to see if there's potential life on Mars. Outside of that, I work with ProEd, which you've seen some brochures on, and in the UK, a charity where we do a space settlement design competition, and also another one, an environmental design competition. And those also have a program that that you can have students attend in the summer at Imperial College called the Global Space Design Challenge. And I believe Sumo has some brochures if you're interested in that. So I'll pass the mic to, oh, you got it.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dr. Andre Hector, and I'm currently a postdoctoral researcher in radio astronomy at the University of Oxford. We're developing the Band 5 receiver package for the Square Kilometre Array, which is an upcoming radio telescope observatory, which is going to be ground-based and split across 2 continents in South Africa and Australia. So that's a very exciting project to be a part of. Before that, I did my PhD studies in Oxford as well. I was at the Queen's College, and I focused on novel heterodyne detection technologies for submillimeter wavelength astronomy. I can tell you more about that in detail later on, as I'll be around for most of the day. And then before that, I did a integrated 4-year master's at Royal Holloway, which is one of the universities within the University of London system. And I did an integrated master's in physics, mainly focusing on astronomy modules, because that's something I've always been interested in and thought would be fun.
Hi everyone, it's great to be here with you today. I'm Dr. Alison Twiner, and I'm a research associate at Hughes Hall from the University of Cambridge. I have a BSc in psychology and a PhD in the psychology of education, and I have also worked as a research associate in the Faculty of Education within University of Cambridge, so within the university and the college systems, which I think we'll probably speak about a bit more as we go through the day. My research interests are particularly around educational dialogue, multimodal dialogue, use of digital tools to support teaching and learning, and teacher professional learning. But great to be here with you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. 그래요. 제가 아까 좀 시작하기 전에 잠시 소개를 했지만 여기 닥터 페리시 같은 경우에는 뭐 프로에드를 창립하고 그다음에 GSDC라고 되게 유명한 프로그램이 있거든요. 그래서 이걸 만드신 분이기도 하고요. 그리고 2분 같은 경우는 사실 리서처로 제가 좀 모시고 오긴 했거든요. 한 분은 에듀케이션 디파트먼트에서 캠브리지 알리슨 트위너 박사님께서는 그죠? 에듀케이션 분야에 계시고요. 그다음에 가운데 계신 그 안드레 헥터 씨는 그 천체 물리에 관련된, 그다음에 사우스 아프리카하고 호주에서 전파 관련된 해외에서 전파, 해외가 아니죠. 그 우주에서 받는 전파 이런 거 관련돼 가지고 연구를 계속 하시는 분이거든요. 그래서 진짜 광대한 연구를 하시고 그다음에 광대한 서포트를 펀드를 받아 가지고 하시는 분이거든요. 그래서 이런 분들이고요. 그다음에 리서치에 대한 부분을 계속 좀 얘기를 하실 거예요. 그래서 어쩌면 우리는 제 교육도 그랬었고 한국에서 배웠을 때는 리서치에 대한 부분은 굉장히 좀 많이 안 했던 기억이 많아요. 그다음에 학교 레벨, 랭킹 이걸 가지고 좀 그죠 학교를 판단했던 부분이 좀 있거든요. 하지만 영국에서 어떤 부분을 더 중요하게 생각하고 하는지 좀 그걸 좀 알려드리기 위해서. 그다음에 모르겠어요. 이 기회에 미국보다는 또 영국이 좀 더 낫다라고 생각하는 분들이 영국을 좀 생각할 수 있는 기회가 좀 됐으면 좋겠다고 싶어서 이걸 만들었습니다. 그리고 오늘 포럼은 이렇게 시작을 할게요. 그 첫 번째 이 이후에 바로 제가 그 퀘션을 만들었거든요. 그래서 10 퀘션인데 약간 좀 가벼운 퀘션이긴 해요. 하지만 전체적인 걸 좀 통과하는 그런 퀘션이기도 해요. 왜 영국을인지, 그죠? 영국 교육이 왜 좋은지, 그다음에 학생들이 영국에서 진짜 요구하는 학생상은 어떤 건지, 왜 이런 부분에 대해서 좀 가볍지만 그래도 가장 중요한 질문이라고 생각했던 건 좀 했고요. 그다음에 몇 개의 질문은 뭐 K-팝이라든지 한국에 대해서도 좀 물어본 것도 있어요. 그래서 이건 좀 그죠? 이해해 주시면 될 것 같고요. 그다음에 이어서 이제 그 각본이 그죠? 옥스퍼드, 캠브리지, 임페리얼 순서대로 프레젠테이션을 좀 준비를 했거든요. 그래서 프레젠테이션을 통해서 뭐 본인이 하는 리서치도 좀 알려주고요. 그다음에 리서치 부분은 좀 어려울 수는 있을 거예요. 하지만 그걸 다 아실 필요는 좀 없으실 것 같고, 그다음에 리서치가 왜 이런 리서치를 하는지, 왜 그다음에 이걸 왜 설명하는지, 그다음에 리서치가 중요하다, 왜 이 정도 생각을 하시면 될 것 같고요. 물론 관련 분야에 계신 분들은 당연히 이해하실 거고요. 그다음에 컴퓨터 사이언스라든지 왜 이런 걸 설명하는데 저도 내용을 봤는데 그렇게 어렵진 않고 좀 재미있게 좀 해놨거든요. 그래서 재미있는 시간이 좀 될 것 같고요. 그리고 중간에 제가 간식 시간이 좀 있을까요? 그래서 샌드위치하고 음료수하고 왜 이런 것들을 좀 준비해놨거든요. 그래서 좀 드시면 될 것 같고요. 그 다음에 이어서 이제 하이라이트가 될 수 있는데 야스민 사와가 그죠? OIC 아니면 OIC보다는 어떻게 톱 학교를 입학을 하는지, 어떻게 의대에 입학을 하는 건지, 왜 이런 부분에 대해서 굉장히 소상히 얘기해 주고요. 그다음에 여기 계시는 부모님들 중에서는 굉장히 좀 이 프로그램이라든지 다른 학교하고 비교해서 어떻게 다른지, 왜 이 학교가 굉장히 성공을 했는지, 왜 이런 부분에 대해서 좀 질문을 해 주셔도 되고요. 이 부분에 대해서 잘 설명해 주실 겁니다. 그리고 뭐 말씀드렸던 것처럼 중간에 브레이크 타임에 사진 찍는 거라든지 그다음에 이후에 그죠 좀 질문한다든지 개인적으로 와서 한다든지 왜 이런 거 괜찮으니까 그렇게 해주시면 될 것 같아요. Okay, so let's start the forum question. Yeah, okay. 혹시 그 질문이 계시는 분 좀 있을까요? 그다음에 우리 지금 지영 씨 마이크 좀 혹시 그 중간에 이 네 분들한테 궁금한 거 있으면 질문을 하실 수 있는 시간도 있긴 하는데 일단은 제가 만든 질문 가지고 좀 물어보도록 하겠습니다.
Okay. Oh, so are you asking?
Okay,
the
I
question?
can-
Are you asking the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
제가 그렇게 발음이 좋거나 뭐 그러진 않은데 제가 그래도 하도록 하겠습니다. 카메라가 교정이 돼서 저희 직원들이 그저 발음 되게 좋은데 제가 하도록 하겠습니다. Welcome to Korea. How are you feeling and the first impression about South Korea? So you don't have to each so maybe one.
How are you feeling? What's your
Well, we haven't seen very much yet, but I'll say that all of the people that we met are extremely nice. So it's really refreshing. I've also probably not seen enough people walking around, but I'm used to downtown London and Manhattan and other places, and people they're so busy walking fast that it seems quite chaotic. And here it seems a little bit more relaxed. Now, I'm sure it's not always that way. But I would like to see more of the country. I've been to Southeast Asia and China quite a few times, and I have not been to South Korea previously. And I was asking where some of the natural wilderness areas were, and I'm still not sure that I know where they are yet, but I have one day I'd like to go see a little bit more of the country. So it's very nice to be here.
지금 이틀 전에 월요일에 와가지고 딱 그 이틀 정도 있었거든요. 그다음에 어제 하루 잠깐 갔다가 우리 그 인사동을 잠깐 갔거든요. 그래서 거기 가서 그 하는데 지금 너무 비지하다고 뭐 이런 얘기를 하잖아요. 인사동 여기서 인사동 가는데 2시간이 걸렸어요. 거기에 지금 뭔가 시위 뭐 이런 게 겹친 것 같기도 하고요. 올 때는 30분밖에 안 걸렸는데 그래서 인사동에 사람들 많이 있는데 가서 이렇게 있었고 그다음에 한국 음식 좀 먹었고요. 왜 그렇게 했어요. 그리고 베트남 전쟁에도 참여를 했다는 얘기를 또 하시더라고요. 그래서 한국에는 관심이 있고 그때 이제 여전히 연락을 하시는 분 한국 사람도 있고 그렇대요. 근데 처음 오신 거고요. 오케이.
Okay, so to answer the first part, I'm feeling wonderful, and to answer the second part is this is actually my first time to Asia in general. So we did a similar event in Hong Kong, and now we're in Korea. And you know, my first impression of Korea is that it's a wonderful place. Suno took us out for a Korean barbecue on the first night, which was amazing to see everything being cooked in front of you. And then yesterday we walked around Seoul, which is a very vibrant and sort of diverse type of place, and it's a really interesting city. We spent quite a bit of time walking around art galleries, which was incredible, so soaking up the culture, and also then in the evening retired to drink some traditional Korean tea, which was delicious. And yeah, so really embracing Korea and the culture, and it's been great.
I think your initial start to that welcome to Korea sums up how I feel. I feel very welcomed here. Same as Andre, this is also my first trip, not only to South Korea, but also to Asia. I know, unfortunately, I will not do justice to being here during this time, but I'm very much enjoying it and hope that I might be able to return and actually explore a little more another time. So thank you for having us here.
Welcome to Korea again. Yeah, okay.
I'll add one thing. I've been to Seoul many times, but I literally just come and then leave a few days after, so I haven't actually had the chance to explore much. But yesterday was really nice, exploring where did we go? The cultural.
인사동.
In Sadong, yes, we went there. It was really nice go through in the art gallery, and one of the best tea shops, I think, that we've actually. It was so authentic, so it was really nice. So really nice to see the culture. And I didn't know that there was a monarchy system. You used to have a monarchy system when Suno told me there's a palace. So I did. So that was new information to me as well. So every time I come here, I'm learning something new.
우리나라가 왕이 오랫동안 지배를 좀 하고 뭐 이런 나라였었잖아요. 이런 거에 대해서 전혀 몰랐다고 얘기하더라고요. 그래서 리퍼블릭이 된 지도 사실 얼마 안 됐잖아요. 그래가지고 그거에 대해서 얘기하고 오면 사실 일 때문에 많은 얘기를 못 하고 이렇게 즐기지 못하는데 어제는 또 이렇게 다른 손님들이 있어가지고 그죠 거의 그죠 처음으로 이렇게 갔다 온 것 같아요. 뭐 전에 롯데 월드타워 한번 가고 그다음에 이번 처음 그렇게 많이 왔는데 일만 했던 것 같아요. 예. 다음 next question. What is the stereotype of South Korea in the UK? And have you recently heard about Korean culture like K-pop, K-film, K-food, and etc.? 이분이 보청기를 좀 끼고 계세요. 그래서.
That's a big question, but I'll try and have a go.
Have you heard of South Korea?
I have heard of K-pop. I have young children, and so they educate me about these things. So I'm slowly learning. I think in general, I probably try to avoid stereotypes too much. I think we lose a lot of people by stereotypes. But I would say we probably don't know enough about South Korea, and so I'm hoping whilst I'm here, I might learn more that will educate me again in that respect.
Yeah, I think South Korea is definitely very much developing in the UK, and the perception of it is overwhelmingly positive, with things like K-pop and K-food being, you know, people's awareness of it is definitely going up. I certainly have heard of these things. In addition, I've recently heard of a relatively new thing, I think, called K-reality, which is you know, Korea's sort of take on reality television, which is developing and gaining traction in the media. And yeah, I hope to you know, expose myself further to these things and learn more about Korean culture and leave Korea knowing more than when I came.
So my teaching career has spanned over the last 20 years in both my school, my former school, and now Oxford International College. So I've had the fortunate to being part of many Korean students who have come to my schools, who have gone on to study competitive courses at many top universities, and through them I have learned a lot about K-pop, BTS, for example. And I have to say, I take great pride, although I must confess, I haven't seen the movie, but when it was announced that it won the Oscar, Parasite, I think I took great pride in that, because I think it just felt, as a Malaysian, as an international, coming to the UK as an international student and then living there and making UK my home, I take great pride in just sharing that, being an Asian, sharing that pride that the world is changing. So I think we should all revel in that. So yeah, but thank you.
Imperial has many Southeast Asian, Chinese, and South Korean students. It's a bit more international than most of the other universities, especially the United States. Although I know that there's a special relationship, really more with South Korea and the United States. But there aren't as many students. But then the United States is a pretty big country with a lot of universities too. So you've come into a university, and there won't be probably a very large group of Southeast Asian students, or Korean or Japanese. But at Imperial College, I think we're almost 35% in my department. So it's quite diverse, and I think that Imperial College says that they have 137 different countries represented at the university. So it's quite diverse, and there's a lot of emphasis in Korea and also China, Hong Kong, Japan, to really work hard and focus on what they're doing. Sometimes everybody works hard and they don't spend enough time actually enjoying a great city like London.
여기는 굉장히 아카데믹하신 분이니까 많이 알기는 좀 쉽지 않을 거예요. 하지만 영국에서는 이미 그 K-팝이라든지 K-드라마라든지 이런 것은 너무 유명해가지고, 사실 저희 학생들이 들은 얘기로는, 왜 어떤 학교인데, 특정한 학교인데, 그 한국 학생들이 코리안 소사이티를 만들었대요. 왜냐면 한국 학생들끼리 모으려고. 근데 모였는데 갑자기 한국 학생들보다 외국 학생이 너무 많은 거예요. 그래서 불편하잖아요. 영어도 하고 하는 것도 불편하고 문화도 불편하니까 나중엔 코리안 온리 소사이티를 또 만들었대요. 그렇게 절대 하지 마라라고 얘기를 하는데, 아무튼 그죠. K-팝이라든지 K-푸드, 지금 뭐 런던에 굉장히 많은 코리안, 옛날에는 저 갔을 때는 된장, 고추 싸가지고 간 사람 꽤 있었거든요. 근데 지금 그런 사람들 거의 없죠. 지금 소도시 뭐 이런 데를 가더라도 한국 라면 뭐 이런 것들 다 있고요. 그다음에 뭐 BTS라든지 이런 걸 모르는 젊은 학생들은 많이 없을 정도예요. 네. 그럼 next question. In Korea, the UK is normally fifth study destination after USA, China, Japan, Australia, and Canada. Could you please explain good things about studying in the UK?
Okay, so I think Randall and I will answer this question. So the question is about comparison of studying in the UK versus other countries, and obviously you've listed US, China, Japan, Australia, and Canada. Randall will be able to give you a little bit more insight about the UK versus US. But just from my experience, again, having helped a number of students with their career mapping and on a global strategic pathway. So in my college, we help students to map not just their destination in the UK, but we have students applying to the US, Canada, Ireland, any way that they want to apply to. I think the key thing is that in terms of the differences, of course, there are differences with the undergraduate degree itself. Randall would talk about a little bit more about the US. There is differences. So for example, you take medicine, right? Medicine, UK is the only place that you could do. You could go for undergraduate degrees, same as Ireland, but then you won't be able to take hospital placements in Ireland. Australia only has 4 universities which has undergraduate, the rest are all graduate entry. US is obviously graduate entry, Canada is graduate entry. So there are nuances. Medicine, I've just given one example. But overall, I would say that you want to be in a position where you've done all the preparation, all the career preparation, your academic preparation to a stage where you are in the position that you can apply to a multitude of universities. I think that is the best place to be in, rather than just focusing on one destination. You might as well open your doors and apply globally to many countries, but you want to be in a position that you have the time and you have the activities, you have the preparation to be able to do that. My students do that, so we don't just concentrate on the UK, we look at worldwide. So I think in terms of differences, of course there are differences, and it will take us too long to talk about each country's differences. There are obviously differences with the degree, the style of teaching, the length, the cost, but I think the key thing is you want to be in a position that you are prepared by the time you reach year 12 studies. You're prepared to apply a number of universities, which is what we do, which is how we help our students.
Well, first of all, I'm fairly familiar with Canadian, which is not really much different from the United States. But the two countries are vastly different in how you apply and how education works at the university. In the United States, you go to a 4-year undergraduate, as versus in the UK, usually a 3-year. In the UK, if you want to do a combined undergraduate and a master's program, you can do that in 4 years. And in the US, it's 4 years undergraduate and 2 years the master, and then at least 3 years for PhD if you want to go on and do that. And the same thing would apply to medical school, with the addition then in the United States that you go to residency after you finish medical school. All in all, I spent 10 years at university in the United States. Fortunately, I didn't do it all in one stretch. I did a bachelor's and a master's, then I spent 20 years in business and industry, and then went back and did a PhD. Which I admit was kind of hard because I lost some of those brain cells doing business that I needed to reacquire to understand new sciences like molecular biology. But the main thing is if you don't know what you want to do specifically, the U.S. system is very good, because the first 2 years at university, you do basically studies in 4 different areas of science, humanities, social sciences, and so you get a wide introduction to all of the different areas. In the UK, if you come through the A-level system and others, you're going to end up already going into one specific place. In the US, you don't do that until after 2 years at the university. You declare a major. And frankly, it's very easy then in the US to change your major. If you get a bachelor's degree in painting and art, let's say, for instance, that doesn't mean that you can't go on to doing medical degree. If you really want to, you'll have to do a little remedial training in organic chemistry and some of the basic areas. But it's very easy to switch what you want to do career-wise. It's very difficult. Now, later I'm going to talk about computer sciences and computer engineering at Imperial College. And it's right on the web page. If you're interested in computer sciences at Imperial College, they talk about switching programs, and they say it is possible, but it's not easy, even if you want to switch to something closely related like mathematics, which is a definite important facet of computer sciences. So they're both quite different. I would say, summary, if you don't know what you want to do, the U.S. is a good place to go. If you're pretty certain what you want to do, then, or your sons and daughters, then the UK system is good, and also it's a bit shorter. So you can graduate faster. That might mean that you're paying less tuition for a less number of years also. However, you can do things fairly inexpensively in the US, or it can be very expensive if you go to the Harvard, Princeton, Yale, MIT, Caltech type of private schools.
I think if you are able to discover your passion, understand your direction, then the UK provides you a more structured kind of like a degree because you know what you're getting yourself into. Whereas for the US system, you have to have an interest in a multitude of areas. So, I have students who I had a boy who I brought to a US fair, and he went up to Harvard, and they said, whilst you're studying for computer science, you also need to pick something like history, English literature, and he came out horrified because he was like, I don't have an interest in that. I just want to study computer science. So I think if by a certain stage you have discovered that passion and you know what you want to do, then UK gives you a more structured. And also a lot of my students, they do their undergraduate in the UK, and then they do their postgraduate in the US. So I had a young man who did mathematics degree at Cambridge, did his master's at Imperial in computer science, and then went on to study at MIT on full scholarship. His PhD is actually easier. We were talking about this before. Is actually from UK to US. It's an easier transition from UK to US than US to UK, because the UK degrees are specialized undergraduate degrees, whereas the undergraduate degrees in the US is broad. So it's actually easier from UK to US than the other way around.
많이 이해했을 거라고 생각되는데 메인 그 차이점이 영국은 그 서브젝트를 정말 잘 알아야 들어가야 되는 그런 과정이거든요. 그래서 3년 동안 미국은 그죠? 여러 가지 히스토리도 해야 되고 여러 가지 다양한 전공을 좀 해야 되는데 영국은 전혀 그렇지 않아요. 전공 필수부터 바로 시작을 하는 거예요. 그래서 A레벨 할 때 그다음에 오늘 여기에서도 전공에 대해서 있고 어떻게 전공을 찾는지 왜 이런 부분들 정말 좀 잘 알아야 되고 자기소개서에 정말 그 전공에 대한 열정을 써야 되는 거예요. 그러니까 미국은 굉장히 여러 가지 스포츠도 해야 되는지 봉사활동도 해야 된다든지 여러 가지 컴피티션 해야 되는지 왜 이런 걸 다 종합해서 가는데 영국은 전혀 그렇지 않거든요. 심지어 올림피아드 예를 들면 수학에서 골드 메달이라는데 올림피아드 이렇게 가지 않다라고 하더라도 캠브리지 수학과 가는 데는 전혀 문제가 없다. 오히려 제 경험상 그런 게 있거든요. 올림피아드에서 그죠? 메달을 받았다. 이런 학생은 캠브리지 수학과를 떨어진다. 그런 얘기도 있어요. 이해되시죠? 물론 올림피아드 메달 딴 사람은 다 떨어진다. 이런 얘기는 하는 건 아니에요. 하지만 그 열정을 어떻게 그죠? 표현해 주느냐. 왜 이런 것들이거든요. 그래서 수학과를 가면 바로 수학만 해요. 그리고 3년이거든요. 3년 끝났을 때는 거의 리서치 정도까지 하거든요. 그래서 석사 1년을 해도 전혀 문제 없는 상황이 되는 거거든요. 근데 미국은 그렇지 않다 보니까 그러니까 미국 석사 1학년을 거의 영국 대학교 3학년에서 어느 정도 커버를 한다라고 생각을 좀 하셔야 될 거예요. 그래서 마지막 학년에서는 거의 배우는 것보다는 리서치를 해야 된다든지 이런 것들이 많거든요. 그래서 이런 부분이 좀 차이고요. 물론 랭킹이라든지 월드 랭킹이라든지 어느 나라 우리나라에서 얼마나 알려졌는지 이런 것들은 그죠? 지금 제가 얘기를 해줄 수 없고 이건 그죠? 개인의 선택이고요. 그래서 아무튼 그 차이를 좀 얘기해 드렸고요. Okay, so Dr. Hector do you want to say more? Next question. Okay, yeah, okay, you can. Next question. Okay. Question 4. Korea is so much connected to USA in terms of economy, education, culture, and other many areas. The UK is relatively less known. What aspects of study areas are good or better than USA? 저희 말 발음이
I
좀
think this question
익숙해지셨죠?
again, this question again, Randall and I will answer this question. Randall, because he has the experience of studying in both, and because I've helped students in both, and of course Oxford and Cambridge will say they're the best universities. So I think just on the point of what study areas are good or better than the US, they're obviously different. They're different, and you would want to have different things. I mean, just to share my story. So when I was studying, I also applied to the US and applied to the UK because I think in general that's what most students do. As international students, you want to keep your doors open. So you always apply to multitude of universities globally, right? Nothing stops you from applying to US, Australia. It's not the same as British parents who are looking at UK as their destination. There's only very few British families who look at US as an option, although it has been growing over the last few years. But generally, I would say, if you know, I think the UK, one very good thing about the UK is that the length, the duration, as Randall said, is shorter, which means that you could do your master's and then you could go and do postgraduate sooner, and you get into the world of work with training placements and so on sooner, which I think is great. Also, I would say that getting into top universities in the UK, when you compare that with top universities in the US, so when you compare the likes of, say, Oxford versus MIT, MIT is really tough at the stage. Like there's with Oxford and Cambridge, you are looking at admission test, your academic results, your interview preparation. All those things are kind of more strategical, like you can actually work towards. Whereas applying to MIT, you have to have, say you have to be the top in Olympiad, or you have, so say if you want to do physics for MIT, you have to have achieved the best in the country for something. The bar is so much more higher in that sense, and both universities are brilliant. Oxford, if you look at world ranking, fantastic, but it's just, I think for international students, the bar you're setting yourself is so much more higher, and you end up not enjoying the process. So I would say my advice is to apply to both and see where you get to. But you've got to be in a position where you are prepared to apply both, not to put all the pressure in the last year where you're suddenly saying, I'm applying to UK and US, because applying to MIT is tough. Applying to Oxford is also very tough. So, but I think in terms of study thing, it just depends on what your style of learning, your style of, and also the country obviously is different. I mean, there's 4,500 universities in the US. I mean, that's huge, large. You have the state system, you have the private universities and state universities, whereas UK largely are state system, they're not private universities. But yeah, I would say it's down to that. Randall, do you want to?
Many of the universities you might overlook, like there's the top group of Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Caltech, Stanford, but there's several large state universities with 50, 60,000 students that have departments that are often rated as highly as the Harvard and Yale schools are. Some of those are University of Washington, the University of California schools, Wisconsin, Philadelphia, Miami, New York University. So those, or New York University is a private school, excuse me on that, but there are several schools that are really good and top-notch. And the one that I went to, University of Washington, microbiology, is rated above Harvard when it comes to microbiology and virology, for instance. So if your interest is in a specific area, you might want to look there. Other than that, the U.S. is probably more closely aligned with Korea in a sense of being technical in training. The things that you do can be rather intense, like at some of the schools. They're very competitive, like MIT and Caltech. Not quite as competitive at other schools. But if you're just studying general science and you're interested in the United States, and you go to an organic chemistry class, let's say, for instance, all of a sudden you'll find you were there to just learn a little bit about organic chemistry. There's a couple hundred students in the main lectures, and you'll find that there are med students, pre-med students, that have to get a top grade in organic chemistry. So all of a sudden you're competing against students whose whole future career depends on getting a top grade. Many of them have actually sat in on the classes before or been tutored, and know a lot about the topic before they ever take it. So there's a lot of interesting little political things that you have to account for when you're studying in the US. The biggest thing that I noticed in the UK when I first came, and when students first start, is there are many tables about where you want to volunteer, what social aspects you might want to participate in. There's computer clubs, archery, many different things, bowling, swimming, gymnastics, a lot of different things that are also pushed in the UK that aren't at all in the United States. Now, of course, you can do those things in the US universities, but for instance, volunteering is not one of them. And I run a charity in the UK, and we have lots and lots of volunteers that have been with us for 15 years, and it's really nice. But in the US, there's the International Space Settlement Design Competition that we hold at NASA, and it's very difficult to find volunteers because the society is not one that likes to do volunteering. I'll add one other little thing is when I first came to Oxford, the professors that I worked with held a small dinner in a 13th century library that held about 12 people. And they read from a book from somebody that was sitting in that same chair in 1247, something like that. But the main point that he made is and I told this little story in Hong Kong, and I think it sums up one of the differences, is they said that Dr. Perry is going to teach us about science, and we're going to teach him how to debate. There's a big emphasis in the UK on speaking back and forth with people and debating and understanding, and that really, we'll get to this later, is a major component of the interviewing. Interviewing in Oxford and Cambridge is about reasoning and how you think. At a place like Imperial College, it's more based on how good your grades are, how well you tested, and less about how you reason and how your critical thinking. It's very important at Oxford and Cambridge.
Sorry, just to add to that, Oxford and Cambridge is unique in the most unique universities compared to other universities around the world because of the collegiate system, the supervision system, which I'm sure later on you'll hear that from Andre about how to choose colleges. So actually that makes Oxbridge very different to anywhere else. So the supervision, the collegiate is a very different style of teaching and learning. So again, you need to sort of comprehend whether that's the kind of style of learning that you want, but it is very different to the US.
사실 질문했던 그죠? 스터디 에어리어보다는 약간은 그 공부하는 방식, 그죠? 왜 이런 것들에 좀 더 집중해서 좀 얘기를 해주는 것 같아요. 그래서 당연히 리서치가 되게 중요하고요. 그다음에 옥스퍼드, 캠브리지 같은 경우는 1대1 수업을 거의 대부분 해요. 그러니까 굉장히 많은 책을 읽고, 그러니까 뭐 에세이 5,000자 에세이를 그죠? 뭐 보통 3개나 4개 정도 일주일에 내고, 그걸 하나 만들려고 하면 책을 한 20권 정도, 25권 정도 읽어야 되니까 거의 뭐 75권에서 100권 정도는 읽어야 되는 거죠. 그런 식으로 그죠? 하고 1대1 이렇게 하는 거죠. 그다음에 네가 생각한 논리가 어떤 거냐, 네가 알고 있는 지식이 뭐냐, 이게 아니라 네가 아는 논리가 뭐냐, 네가 주장하려고 하는 게 뭐냐, 왜 이런 식의 그죠? 논문인 거죠. 그죠? 리즈닝이라고 얘기하는 게. 그래서 그거에 대해서 네가 논리적으로 합당한 이유가 있다라고 하면 점수를 주는 거예요. 그러니까 여기서는 드롭 아웃 레이트라고 하죠. 중간에 그만두거나 왜 그냥 전공을 바꾸거나 왜 이런 학생들이 거의 없어요. 그러니까 3% 정도 공식적으로는. 그러니까 하버드나 예일 뭐 이런 데는 거의 30%, 40% 그런 얘기를 하잖아요. 그러니까 왜 이런 방식이다, 그죠? 왜 그런 이유를 좀 얘기를 해주고 있어요. Next question. Okay. In Korea, when we choose the university, the higher ranked universities are our priority rather than the degrees they want to study. Can you please give some advice about the choice between university ranking and degrees?
I think I can add to some of the comments that have been raised so far, that I would encourage people to think about what you're interested in and where your strengths are, and particularly where your interests and strengths align, and then look at the courses that are on offer in these different universities, because it does have to be a match with the university and the course. There are lots of similarities across the different syllabuses in different universities, but there are also some key differences. And so maybe for me, a psychology degree in one place could be very, very different to a psychology degree in another university. So just choosing on the basis of the university might mean you're not really getting the rich experience that aligns with how you want to learn and what you want to study.
Yeah, so just to add to that a little bit, I think while university rankings should play some role in choosing a university, they're by no means the be-all and end-all of where you should submit your application. And I would say that it's important to actually look at the subject-specific rankings as well, because these are often a good indicator as to how good a particular university is for a given subject. So let's say you want to study, biology. Don't just look at the overall university rankings and, submit your application to the top 5 universities you see there, but have a look at which universities are ranked top for biology, for example, because sometimes this will change a little bit subject by subject. And ultimately, it's also important to, think about the overall university experience that you will have at any particular place. For instance, if you choose to study somewhere like London, which is, quite busy and quite bustling, that might be a very different experience in terms of how you commute to your lectures, how you do your studies, where and how you get taught, compared to somewhere like Oxford or Cambridge, which are slightly more smaller, towns and slightly more smaller places, where you might be offered a sort of more intimate experience in your education, and a little bit, in some ways, a little bit more relaxed in terms of travel time and things like that. So, to summarize, university rankings are important, but do think a little bit about, how they stack up when picking the particular subject that you're interested in, and that should be the primary, the primary thing that you look at, because ultimately you're going to be doing this subject for a number of years, at the very least 3. So make sure it's something that you enjoy and you think you'll get a good experience out of.
So just to share with you some of the things that we do in our school, all our students are encouraged to apply to top universities, regardless. So unlike in some schools, only the top 1% of the cohort are encouraged to apply, because Oxford, Cambridge, Imperial, G5 universities do want the best students. So generally speaking, only the top 1% normally are encouraged to apply. But at my school, we encourage everybody, because we want them to get on this aspirational learning journey. As I mentioned earlier on, we feel that students gain so much more out of this journey, regardless of the outcome. It doesn't matter so much if they get into Oxford or Cambridge, but what matters is they become better students, they amass more knowledge, they build mental resilience. They've gained so much from this experience by doing work experience, voluntary work, going clubs and societies. They gain so much more than just that offer to university. So UCAS application, UCAS is the body that students apply to, the central body. In US, you call it Common App. In UK, it's called UCAS. So UCAS, we have 5 options to UCAS for non-medical courses. Medicine, dentistry, veterinary, you have 4 choices. 4 choices. For non-medicine, you have 5 choices. Medicine also, you do have 5 choices, but you can only apply to 4 medicine, dentistry, or veterinary. The 5th one, you can apply something else. But because you only have 1 personal statement, you normally would apply to the same degree type. So, for example, you apply for 4 medicine, the 5th one you can apply for biomedical sciences. And then for non-medicine, you can apply to all 5, to computer science or psychology or engineering and so on. So I think the question about ranking and course, first of all, I think you need to identify what course are you applying for. Are you applying for a vocational degree, or are you applying for an academic curiosity degree? And please, for parents, the message is do not be afraid of academic curiosity degrees. degrees, because they're equally as valuable as vocational degrees. So vocational degrees are things like medicine, because you know you're going to be a doctor, engineering, because you know you're going to be an engineer. But academic curiosity will be something like history, or it could be mathematics degree. Now, I know some people might think, okay, what do I gain out of a mathematics degree? Well, actually, it opens so much more doors than just, so you just don't have that fear of applying for academic curiosity degrees. Once you have chosen what type, whether it's vocational, whether it's academic curiosity, then you have to think about, okay, like university choices. And I appreciate that for international students, they also have to think about what happens when you get back home, right? So if I went to university which was ranked quite low in the ranking table, and I went back to Malaysia, I may not be able to get a job. I understand the pressures, the societal pressure. So I think the way I would advise my students is that when it comes to medicine, you have 33 medical school. I've never heard of an unemployed doctor. If somebody has, then let me know. So it really doesn't matter which medical school you go to, as long as you become a doctor. I don't think it matters whether you go to Oxford, Cambridge, because Oxford, Cambridge is very traditional in its teaching when it comes to medicine. They don't have many patient contact. Compared to other universities, there's more patient contact. So that's for medicine. But for the non-medical courses, you have 5 options. So you could apply to top 3 as your like top universities, and then the other 2 you could just choose based on location, based on subject ranking, for example. So that hopefully fits in your societal expectation, your parental expectation, but also for the children to be able to choose. So hopefully that solves both parents and children's sort of debate around which university because you do have 5 options. You can try for top 3, and then the other 2 you can choose for something based on subject ranking. As Andrew said, there's subject ranking as well. You take computer science, sometimes Imperial ranks better than Oxford. Sorry, I'm pitting them against each other. But and you have medicine, for example. The number 1 ranked for medicine is Dundee. It's not Oxford and Cambridge, it's Dundee, So sometimes you do look at subject ranking, but I also appreciate that there is a societal expectation for you when you return back to your home country, when you're applying for jobs and everything, then going to a good university is important to you. But I think you can strategize it so that you have 5 options, apply top 3, and if you aim for Oxford, Cambridge, Imperial, if you don't get into these universities, you would still end up, because you have worked towards these universities, you would still end up with a very good university. So you aim for the clouds and you reach hopefully to the stars, which is equally very good. Well, whichever way, the other way around.
As Yasmin said, it makes a great deal of difference if you're going to do an upper degree, like you want to do a master's and a PhD degree. When you come to workplace or applying to universities for jobs, if that's at a top university, it's very important. It isn't as important where you went to an undergraduate degree at that point. But if you're going to go straight into business or industry, banking, finance, it makes a lot of difference which school you go to then. You might want to have the top university on your pedigree and your CV, because everybody will take a second look at Harvard or Cambridge or Imperial or Oxford. But in the United States, again, in particular, it doesn't matter whether you go to any state university. If you can get into graduate school, and the way you get into graduate school is by having a real interest in your topic, top grades, that sort of thing. And sometimes it's really easy to get top grades at a lesser university because it's less competitive with students. And also they'd like people to shift. There's the University of Washington, where I'm from, does not like people to do 3 degrees at one university. They want you to come from the UK or another university in the United States from your bachelor's to your master's. In looking at the difference between departments and top universities, it's hard for me to say you don't have to look at a top university, but I would look at the top universities obviously first. and then find departments, and they're vastly different at different universities. The one at Imperial College, if you want to study environmental biology, you're probably not going to get as much in that as you would in molecular biology. It's very technical oriented, so it's science, technology, engineering, and medicine are the focus, but there's no humanities, for instance, so it's very much on the science front. And but within those groups, you can find just as good of departments at many other universities, like Yasmin said, at Dundee with medicine. Imperial College has 13 hospitals. They're the 13 major primary hospitals that you train at in London, for instance, but still it's not the top rated in medicine.
That is why we said earlier on, it's actually most students do undergraduate in the UK and then they do graduate in the US, because that strategy actually works out really well. You do undergraduate in the UK, you go to a good university in the UK, and the transition to a top graduate school in the US is actually much easier than the other way around. So actually that strategy also works. And just on the point that Alison made about psychology, a very good example, psychology, for example, looking at the course options and seeing different types, because even with the course, once you chose a course, there are differences in terms of what they offer at each university. Oxford, for example, does experimental psychology. Cambridge does psychological and behavioral science, neuroscience. Behavioral science, psychological and behavioral science, whereas Oxford does experimental psychology. Experimental psychology is different. UCL offers psychological and behavioral science. So again, it's like making sure that you really do your research about the course is very important, and doing it early on so that you have a good strategy of which route you're going for.
지금 굉장히 깊은 얘기를 좀 해줬던 것 같아요. 어쩌면 이 질문 내용이 어쩌면 우리가 답을 알고 하는 질문일 수도 있거든요. 근데 전공에 대해서 얼마나 포커스를 맞춰야 되는지, 얼마나 내가 깊이 알아야 되는지, 왜 이 포커스를 맞추지 않으면 사실 아까 얘기했던 것처럼 같은 심리학을 공부하는데도 학교마다 너무 달라가지고 이렇게 되는 경우가 있거든요. 그리고 아까 톱 학교에서는 그죠, 원투원 수업을 많이 한다고 했잖아요. 그 학교에서 그걸 수업을 하는데 내가 리서치를 하고 나의 리플렉션을 그저 얘기해 줘야 되는 거죠. 외워서 얘기하는 게 아니라 이런 상황인데 이 전공을 제대로 모르고 지원하고 그저 그걸 공부한다? 이게 그저 있을 수가 없거든요. 그리고 지금 얘기했던 학교 중에 던디 뭐 이런 얘기도 했지만 러셀 그룹이라고 있거든요. 사실 우리는 옥스퍼드, 캠브리지, 임페리얼 여기 정도만 좀 익숙하지만 나머지는 익숙하지 않거든요. 하지만 굉장히 좀 좋은 학교들이 러셀 그룹이라는 이름으로 있고요. 그래서 뭐 들어보시면 맨체스터, 셰필드, UCL 뭐 여러 학교들이 다 있거든요. 그래서 이 학교들은 리서치를 또 공유하기도 해요. 그러니까 굉장히 좀 리서치가 있다라고 하면 박사를 과정을 간다든지 하는 데는 전혀 문제 없지만 사실은 우리가 비즈니스 환경에서 취업을 한다라고 하면 이 사람을 딱 알아보기에는 그런 걸 좀 회사에서 잘 모르잖아요. 그러니까 높은 랭킹의 학교가 되게 좋다. 왜 이렇게 될 수는 있을 것 같아요. 근데 최근에 저 보면 저희 학생들을 그죠 헤드헌팅을 하고 그다음에 그 해 보면 또 석사 레벨을 많이 하거든요. 그러면 리서치가 뭔지 어떤 분야를 전문성을 가지고 있는지 이런 질문까지 이어지거든요. 그러니까 뭐 학력이 좀 필요하다라고 하면 영국에 가서 그죠 뭐 미국으로 이렇게 가실 수도 있고요. 아니면 영국에서 더 높은 학교로 가는 것은 내 대학교 성적에 따라서 러셀 그룹 정도만 간다라고 하면 그렇게 문제 없는 경우가 꽤 많거든요. 그래서 실제로 그런 걸 되게 많이 보아오고요. 아시죠? 그래요. Next question. Okay. After choosing your degree, should students aim for top university? Do you agree, and why? This is very related questions. So in the next, yeah. 비슷한 질문이어가지고 다음 질문을 할게요. What is your hobby, and why is important for student?
Our
Your
hobby.
own hobby.
Our
yeah,
hobby.
yeah, yeah.
One of my hobbies, and this is actually something that I picked up while I was studying for my PhD at Oxford, and something that I'd never tried before in my life, was rowing. So, you know, it's a lot more fun than it actually looks on the TV. I'd seen it a lot before at things like the Olympics, or at Henley, and it never looked like a, you know, like a particularly engaging activity, until one day I was actually part of the graduate student body committee for 1 year during my PhD. I'll tell you more about that in my talk. But there was a rowing taster day at my college, and I thought, you know, just to say I've tried it, I'll just go down and see what it's all about. And I got in a boat, and it suddenly started moving in all sorts of weird and unpredictable ways. And it's actually incredibly difficult to move a boat, making it look as easy as it does when the guys at the top level do it. And this is something that a lot of people discover or find really interesting or get into when they're, you know, studying for their undergraduate and their PhD alike. And so over the next few years, that became my hobby. And the reason that is, I think it's important, or, you know, it's the reason it's good to have a hobby is because it gives you, first, it gives you an outlet from your academic studies, so it kind of gives you something different to do and something different to focus on. And the other thing is that it really teaches you how to manage your time and organize your time and prioritize things. So, you know, sometimes you'd have a session super early in the morning, and you might need to go to bed early, so you can't stay up super late working because, you know, you have something to be up for at like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning kind of thing. You know, and then one of the years I was part of the committee helping to run the boat club. So again, that meant that I had to organize sessions for other people. And so it teaches you, you know, it teaches you the skill of multitasking. It teaches you how to be a little bit more organized. And I suppose it also gives you, you know, a different perspective on things, and it allows you to try different things. So you have that kind of outlet of doing something different, and in addition to your academic studies.
I think I've mentioned a couple of things. A hobby, if you can call it. I really enjoy spending time with my family and friends. I think that's very important for me. I think it's very important as a student at university, especially if you've moved away from home, creating that new family around you. Those are the people that you're probably going to make lifelong friends. They're going to get you through times when it gets quite difficult. University life can be quite intense, so having people to support you through that is really, really important. And a hobby for myself, I love to dance. It's something that takes me away mentally as well as physically from study and from work. And in more recent years, I have found ways, I'm thrilled to say, to include a focus on movement, more specifically than dance, within my research, focusing around multimodal dialogue and how we make sense and understand things through talk as well as movement and gesture and other forms of communication, which I find really enriching.
그 허비를 갈까요?
I'm going to go next because Randall has too many hobbies. I keep finding out new things about Randall each time I meet him. So my hobby actually, like Alison, just spending time with family and friends, traveling. I have, I think we're all obviously in our lives very, very busy with what we do. And I think it's great that my work is my passion. So I love doing what I do. And I think that's great, but also having just some time for yourself is also very, very important. I think regards to hobby, why is it important for a student? Because you want to demonstrate character. You want to demonstrate your personality. So in your personal statement, which is now changing, personal statement is changing from 2024, they'll have 6 series of questions as opposed to a 4,000-word essay. But currently, if you were to write a personal statement, you would put down a little bit about your extracurricular or what you do and demonstrate your character. But it's important that you actually do them and you actually carry on. And because one of the things at university, you have to learn how to keep a work-life balance, especially if you're going to a top university, because it is just the previous question, why should you be aiming for top university? I just want to say this, and I say this to all students, your parents will love you no matter which university you go to. So you don't have to put yourself under this huge expectation in terms of getting into top university, because what I normally find is that students who just enjoy the process, they're more likely to perform better in their interviews interviews because they're enjoying the process. They've really reveled in that process, and they can demonstrate that enjoyment when they get to the interview stage. But students who have just got this burden in their head that, you know, I have to get into these top universities, they don't tend to you know, present as well. So if your hobby, if you like computer science, for example, and your hobby is to make programming apps, or if your hobbies are related to your career and your courses, that's fine too. It's just a demonstration of your character and your personality, which you want to showcase to the universities. And they want to see that. They want to see you have the academic aptitude, but they also want to see that you have a personality, you are teachable. So I think that's where hobby come in. So just really discovering your passion, because I never thought I would fall into education. I was going to genetics and then suddenly this, but I'm, you know, I love my job, and I think it's great to sometimes have your job as your passion, as not, maybe not your hobby, but really something that you love doing, and then your hobby just becomes an outlet for you to just have some breather time for yourself. Thank you.
I would ask, why do we really want to have hobbies? And it's because it's doing something we really enjoy and like. If you can integrate that with your work, then work might not actually be defined as work. It would be something that you enjoy. Like Yasmin's hobby, to me, is doing what she really does well, she's passionate about, is teaching and helping students get into the university. So I would think her hobby is that, not family and friends. Family and friends are there, but as children, kids go around, they do things like collect rocks. Why? They just have an interest in rocks and crystals and the way things look. So that might mean that a place that they would really be interested in later might be geology, earth sciences, petrology, study of rocks. Other kids like to build rockets and shoot them off and work on propellants and try to get them as high as they can. Something like aeronautical engineering in rocketry might be a place that they would really be interested. If you're interviewing at the university, those things are incredibly important. I really want to see, if I'm interviewing a student for the university, that they're passionate about a topic, and that topic hopefully is the one that they're applying to at the university. In my case, it's astrobiology. So what could you do as a hobby? Well, you might have a telescope. Excuse me. You're always looking out into the universe, trying to see what is out there. Is there life in the universe, for instance? Those kinds of questions. You might have an interest. I've been lucky enough to go down in Woods Hole, which belongs to MIT's deep submersible, which is called Alvin. It's a small submarine that holds 3 people, and I went down 12,000 feet. If somebody was really interested in life in oceanography, they love scuba diving, they love things like that in the ocean, that would really have a big effect on if you're applying to an oceanography degree. So the hobbies and the extracurricular activities are incredibly important. And in fact, that's what sets you aside from just having good grades and top scores. Those things will all help, but the thing that'll set you aside is having some unique experience, either as a volunteer or in hobbies and what your specific interests are.
그래요. 지금 그 합의에 대해서는 사실 저도 할 얘기가 굉장히 좀 많이 있긴 하는데, 그죠? 이렇게 그 사실 저는 굉장히 많이 이런 걸 추천을 해주는 것 같아요. 학생들한테 허비를 물어보고 그걸 어떻게 영국에서 할지, 그다음에 영국에서 학교별로 어떤 스포츠가 강하고 소사이티가 있는지, 왜 이런 것들을 얘기를 해주는 것 같아요. 그래서 그걸 하는 학생들은 굉장히 다른 일에도 포커스를 좀 맞추는 경향이 좀 있었던 것 같고요. 그다음에 전혀 허비를 하지 않고 뭐 A레벨 학교든 대학교든 계속 있었던 학생들은 기숙사에 계속 다른 학생들한테 물어보면 쟤 뭐하니? 라고 얘기하면 기숙사에 그냥 남아있는데요. 어떨 때는 부모도 연락도 안 하고 그냥 기숙사에 남아있는 사람도 있거든요. 그냥 혼자 자기가 있는 사람들이 있거든요. 근데 보면 성적이 그렇게 잘 나오진 않아요. 근데 진짜 이렇게 다른 사람들하고 어울리기도 하고 스포츠도 하고 그다음에 해외도 갔다 갔다 하면서 이렇게 했던 친구들은 딱 그 시간 동안 난 그거 할 거야 라고 하고 정말 공부에 집중을 하는 기수가 굉장히 좀 많았거든요. 그래서 지금 모르겠어요. 장시간 공부하는 거 하지만 저는 그죠. 집중해서 공부하는 학생들이 훨씬 효과가 또 좋았다. 또 이렇게 하는 사람들이 굉장히 좀 멀리 갔던 것 같아요. 오랫동안 그걸 유지를 했던 것 같아요. 집중해서 그저 하는 게 아니라. 그러니까 사실 저는 안타까운 게 우리나라에서 고등학교 3학년을 마치고 번아웃이라고 하잖아요. 그렇게 되는 사람들 꽤 많거든요. 그러니까 공부는 되게 잘하는데 뭘 공부할지, 뭘 하고 싶지, 그냥 얘기 자체가 좀 안 되는 친구들이 굉장히 좀 많았던 것 같아요. 비싼 비용을 내고 가는데 많은 걸 물어봐야 되고, 이걸 공부하고 싶어요, 이거 하고 싶어요, 이렇게 계속 얘기를 해야 되는데 그런 학생들이 굉장히 좀 많았다는 경험이 좀 있어요. 그래서 아무튼 그래서 호비라는 주제로 제가 좀 물어봤고요. 그래서 뭐 하나 물어봐도 굉장히 좀 아카데믹하게 좀 얘기를 좀 많이 해주고 계시네요. 그래서 next question. To reach the top level, do you do anything particular every day, or what question do you make every day? Oh, it's very. What question do you make every day to reach the top level? So yeah, every day. So
Well, so it's leading the way. No, I think it's a very good and a very interesting question, and the thing that I would say that it's important to do is just to do something every day, to practice a little bit every day. You know, you can't go from, or it's very difficult to go from not knowing anything about a topic or a subject and then to, you know, suddenly being an expert in it. You have to work at it and practice little by little and be consistent. You know, a little bit every day is much better than trying to cram the whole course the night before. So, for example, like one of the things that I do every day is, you know, I wouldn't say by any means that I've reached the top level in it, but I enjoy learning languages. And so I'm currently learning Italian using Duolingo. And so I make sure to do a practice lesson every day. And I went on a trip to Italy last year, I think about a year ago, and I found that I could actually converse with people and people could sort of understand me a little bit. And that was all solely from, you know, doing a 10-15 minute practice on Duolingo every day. So practice and consistency, I think, are key. So, and in order to answer the second part of the question, what question do you make every day? I think the question to, you know, that's good to have, or that's good to set for yourself, is to have a target and to kind of, you know, say to yourself, where do I want to be, say, 1 year from now, or 2 years, or 5 years from now? And then ask yourself, you know, what can I do to get there? What can I do to bring that aim, that challenge a little bit closer every day? And if you can work out a sort of a reasonable, feasible path to get there, taking little steps at a time, then hopefully if you keep consistent and practice and work at it, you will eventually get to that ultimate goal that you set before yourself.
Did you practice Korean language yesterday? So we
It's
what kind of sentence?
I am saving that for after my talk. Don't you worry. But
어제 우리 식사를 하고 있었는데 계속해서 한국어를 알려달라고 하는 거예요. 그래서 한 분 오실 때마다 한국어로 좀 얘기하고, 갤러리 갔을 때도 조금 얘기하고 또 얘기하고 그다음에 구글에서 찾아봤던 게 그게 맞지 않는 것 같다고 다시 나한테 알려달라고. 예를 들면 한국에 갤러리에 있으면서 잘 보고 갈 때 안녕히 가십시오라고 얘기하는 거예요. 그래서 그건 안녕히 계세요라고 해야 된다고. 그래서 아무튼 계속 그런 식으로 좀 프랙티스했던 그죠 경험이 있습니다 어제. Okay.
I think to reach the top level, I think, is a difficult concept, because I think you can always learn more and deepen your understanding of something, so there will always be further you can go with something. But I am going to be a little bit cheeky and say that the answer to these questions is probably asking questions is a good strategy. Always asking, what am I missing? Is there another way to look at this? How else could I learn something more about it? What else could I read? Who could I speak to who might have a different perspective? And that kind of continual trying to look at things in different ways and trying to deepen that understanding, I think, is a good strategy that extends our learning further.
So reaching top level. So somebody asked me previously, now that you have my schools have had top the league table, they were like, what's next? And I was like, actually, I've never planned for something to reach the top in terms of league table or what, you know. I think for me, top, when you say to reach the top level, I think for me in my work is about really understanding how I can help every child, because every student is different. There's an individual strategy, and I'll show you some examples later on, that every student's journey is very different. When I was growing up in Malaysia, my mother used to say to me, see Auntie Sally's daughter, what she's doing, you got to do the same. I'm sure it's the same culture here in Korea. Like, you know, it's always like, look at so and so children, and they're doing this and they're getting top results, and you need to be doing the same thing. And I suppose that kind of culture leads you to think that there's always something more you have to do. There's always something else you need to reach. The top is never enough, you know, even if you get 100% in your report card, you're like, okay, so what's next? So I think it's really what I tell my students is, look, you have a strategy, you have an aim. And if that aim is to get into top universities, fine, you make that your aim. But through this process, you need to break it down into daily, weekly, monthly, half-term, holidays, what you're doing during that period of time. So for example, at my college, on a daily basis, we obviously have academic classes. We have admission test preparation, interview preparation, we have career coaching, and so on. On a weekly basis, they have they have tests that they have to do, assessments, and they also take part in career coaching on a weekly basis. They do voluntary work on a weekly basis. Monthly basis, they do wider reading, they take part in competitions. And during the half terms, they go for work experience. So when you break things up in bite-sized approach, and you see, so that it doesn't become overwhelming, you're also enjoying the process as well. So I think that process leads you to this top destination. But actually, even if you don't get there, it's okay, because you have amassed so much more than just getting that offer. So I think it's really, to me, top is really just going through that process, enjoying the process, and then obviously as a byproduct, you could get into one of these top universities, but you've gained a lot more. And as Randall said earlier on, you got the undergraduate's route, you have the graduate route. There's so many routes that you can get to meet your aim, but you've got to start as soon as possible, and you've got to work through this and enjoy that process as well. So I would say to me that is. And what question do you make every day? The second, yeah, I think just echoing what Alison's saying is questioning, always questioning and working out if there's another route and for me is like trying to work out a strategy for every student. Again, is very different. My students have come, we have 40 different nationalities. Students have come with GCSEs, without GCSEs, school transcript, MYP. Everybody's coming with different academic background. How do we then work out a strategy for every student so they have that aspirational learning journey? So I think that's questioning if there are different routes, so that it's not one size fits all. And I think that questioning is very important. And in fact, for students as well, in their learning, the best form of learning is active recall, active learning. So it's asking questions. So learning your topics beforehand, then when you go to the class, ask questions, because that's the best form of learning.
I would say we all want to do well, but the question is what is it reaching the top? What is the top? Is it getting a Nobel Prize or in science? We don't know. What it really gets down to is a personal thing about what you're really comfortable in. Are you happy with what you've done with your life? And so questions that you can ask yourself might be different to each individual. One is that if you're really interested in being very wealthy or rich, you might want to say to yourself every day, I'm going to be a millionaire by the time I'm 25. That would be one thing you could say. If you're not interested in that, you would ask other questions. I'm thinking about, has anybody seen the movie The Fabelmans? It came out in 2022. Maybe not. It was up for Academy Awards. It was really autobiographical about Steven Spielberg. Through his whole young life, he decided that he wanted to make movies. He started out with small cameras and eventually started editing and doing different things. Through his early life, his parents told him, no, that's a hobby. You can't make a living doing that. And of course, we all know that Steven Spielberg has been very successful. He may not have said, I want to be a millionaire at 25, but he did achieve making a lot of money in movies, and he made a lot of good movies. And so every day he asked himself, and in that movie, what could he do to make a better movie? That was his whole interest. So I think it's different to every individual in what you want to do. And achieving the top is not necessarily becoming the president of South Korea or the United States or one of those sorts of things. It's just what is really the position that you think really suits you. And so they're always different. So as parents, you're going to do much like Steven Spielberg's parents did, keep telling him, no, quit the movies, don't do that. It's not important, but he managed to persist and continue to do that anyway. So I always view your job is to help facilitate finding your child's passions, and then helping them achieve that. And then after that, they're really on their own.
그 질문 내용이 사실은 그저 너무 좀 그저 상대적인 거긴 해요. 절대적인 그런 질문은 아니고. 하지만 이 질문을 던지는 이유가 학생들에게는 내가 뭐 톱 학교를 어떻게 하면 입학을 할까? 왜 이런 기준으로 물어본 거죠. 그래서 당연히 그저 내가 정한 레벨 어떻게 도달할 건지 왜 사람마다 다 상대적인 거기 때문에 내가 현재 상태에서 뭐 급여를 그저 뭐 300만 원 받고 400만 원 이거 만족한다. 이건 그저 자기가 그저 그걸 리치한 거잖아요. 그래서 그건 상대적인 거기 때문에 질문 내용이 사실 질문이 되게 좋은 질문은 아니긴 하지만 그래도 토브에 가기 위해서는 어떤 노력을 하는지 왜 이런 것 때문에 좀 물어봤고요. 지금 시간이 or time is up, is so maybe we have just very short questions you might like it. This one. Lastly, what would you do the most? What would you like to do the most in Korea if you have time after today? Chicken and beer, bibimbap.
Okay, I will answer this quickly. For me, it's bibimbap.
Okay.
So if I had a little bit more time, I'd love to explore a little bit more of Korea, especially outside Seoul. And in addition, I recently saw this new phenomenon in K-reality called Physical 100, where people push themselves to the limit of various physical challenges, and whoever wins is declared the strongest person in Korea or something like that. So I'd love to watch more of that and maybe even take part in it.
I think keeping it simple, you've all given up your time to be here today. I'd like to speak to you all and hear about what you want to get out of this and where you want to go.
I personally, just my own interest, I would like to see some more of the natural environments of South Korea. I've asked about this, like what natural parks. My understanding is the northeast part of South Korea has more mountains and interest that way. Those would be the things I would like to see. Any of the indigenous animals, birds, just the things that are natural. I'm finding the cultural part very interesting because everybody here that I've met has been very, very nice and pleasant. I'm not always used to that in the UK. People can be rather reserved in the UK. They don't always smile a lot. And so it would be the natural environment for me that I would like to see more of.
I recommend DMZ. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. 첫 번째 포럼은 여기서 마치고 잠깐 한 15분 정도 쉬시겠다가 바로 또 시작을 하도록 할게요.